we've written ordinances with LMAX, we've written ordinances with LEQ.
You just said that they didn't write one with LMAX.
Alright, that's enough, that's enough.
If you're concerned about the noise, Kathy, it needs to be LMAX, 45 LMAX.
This is our turn to discuss
Your
this.
property, your house is away from it, back by the woods, so you can't walk out there, you can't be out there, only in your own residence, so your property extends away from it, not doing property line. You wanna walk the dog or go with your grandkids or whatever, the closer you get, the louder it is, cause it doesn't matter, cause you don't sleep there, it's your property.
You're gonna build a house. We did. I had, noise measuring instrument. I don't know what the technical name was for it, and I kept it with me for a whole week. I was trying to understand this myself, on what 45 decimals is, what 55 decimals is. When I stepped out of my house in the morning, and before light, and it was still quiet, there was still a few singing birds starting to chirp a little bit.
Oh.
And it was right around 45 decibels. When I measured it in my bedroom, I liked sleeping with a fan on it.
There you go.
That was at 55 decibels in my bedroom. When I went down to the farm, and we had equipment running and things, I mean, it was 75 most of the time. When I stepped in a tractor and started it, it was probably between 90 and 95. And so, I mean, these are very quiet levels.
Oh.
I don't know what a lawnmower is, but I have a feeling that's probably in 85. 75, 80. When the geese were flying,
I think I'm gonna leave, I'm getting.
it was like 55 to 65. When they were honking, coming into the pond. So if you have an instrument for a period of time, you would realize how quiet 45 is. It's pretty quiet.
It might be quiet, but you gotta live with it forever when it's a turbine.
At least your tractor, you can shut it off.
Do your own research, don't listen to them. Yeah, don't listen to them.
What about the insurance?
So the insurance, I would say, most ordinances do not have an insurance requirement for wind. The claims that would be filed against the township for an improvement, it would be just like any other improvement that's zoned in the township. There's not necessarily a lot of liability directly to a township for an accident with someone else's improvement. It's like, someone else's tractor, because you allow farms, injure someone, because your zoning ordinance provides for farms without any zoning review, no review by the planning commission, no review by the township board. That doesn't necessarily mean that the township's liable for that. This does have an insurance requirement, which I think is pretty stringent on ordinances that would permit the land use, and I think it would be sufficient.
Wasn't there,
I think that's
think-
what I
seems
will.
like we
All right,
had a
I think-
discussion.
you had your
it was
public
like
comment.
$20.
That's enough. What did you say, John?
I think in the liability side, when we address this at the PC, they've set a $2 million.
And you'll see other land uses, so I'll give you an example. I don't have your sawmill ordinance in front of me. I'm not sure if that has an insurance requirement. I'm not sure if your gravel pits have an insurance requirement. This is rather unique for a land use to have an insurance requirement, but it does. And I have seen it in practice in other places, so I think you should, protect yourself.
This is the only ordinance we have a lot of things in.
Right.
We don't have any sound on anything else in this township.
Which is typical of zoning.
So I mean, this is the most exclusionary ordinances that we've ever put together in this township.
Do any other questions or
you have any more questions or wondering? You, Jonathan? Okay. So what do you want to do then? Go ahead with it, with the height, it has a height limit now.
Them two motions have been, they are in the draft,
Yeah.
Kyle?
Yes, so they would be, I would put a 650 tip height limit if you go to page 9 under sub M. That would be what I would think is the most appropriate place to put that language.
Okay,
And the place to put a 1640 from a non-participating, a habitable structure on a non-participating lot would be page 8, K1. We should probably talk about what the language would be. So for your 1640 non-participating lot, or not, habitable structure on a non-participating lot, I would recommend that you would use a wind turbine shall be at least 1,640 feet from a habitable structure on a non-participating lot. And let me just look at your defined terms because I want to make sure that I use the correct.
do we need to list, because before the setbacks was basically to non-participating and any habitable structure was the same.
Correct.
So now we need to split that out between non-participating and participating.
Because you have a less stringent standard, theoretically, unless the turbine, well, if, given the height limit you want, because this standard would be more stringent, you could just write that afterwards. So theoretically, it would be 2 times tip height because you'd read that sentence before it, or 1640 from a habitable structure on non-participating land.
It's the only township that doesn't have property lines, right?
And then for your noise or height
Far,
limit,
yeah, Kevin.
a wind turbines,
And then
go ahead.
on K4, we still have 2 tip heights.
K4, you have 2 tip heights of a property line of a non-participating lot.
Right. So
So theoretically, you know, a turbine's not going to be with that language, well, unless they're short. So likely with this provision, it would make the distance even greater than that.
2 habitable, non-participating. Right.
2 times tip height from a property line of a non-participant.
I guess that could technically be 12, 13.
It could be less,
Right.
but it likely will be more. Depend on the property.
So we've got it from a property line.
You do have it from a property line, from a non-participating lot with a tip height standard. And then you also have standards directly related to habitable structures. So you have 2 sets of standards. Yeah, and the greater will govern. So the greater distance from the turbine, whether it's from the property line, that property line measurement, or from the structure on the property, will be what is applied to any turbine.
Shouldn't it then state in there, whichever is further rather than just?
It should, because the reason why it shouldn't is you have multiple setbacks from different areas. So you could write it that way, but the way it's written right now is it has to be read the way that you just explained. It has to be the greater, because to cite the turbine, it has to meet that sub 1 requirement, and it would have to meet the sub 4 requirement. If it meets 1 but not 4, it wouldn't work, or it wouldn't be allowed.
It should be property line, you're making it so someone can't even build a home on the edge of their property because the windmill's too close. Go to property line,
You're stealing people's property.
can't do that.
Make it
But the intrusion goes both ways.
No?
No.
Why?
Because you would have to have at least probably 200 acres to even site.
Who cares?
They could sign a
Okay,
waiver.
That's enough.
You would have to
You
have
had to
200
find
acres
waiver
to have
options, do
even
they?
enough setback.
Make them shorter.
Put a waiver option, John, so that a leaseholder could have it close to their house.
Do that.
Okay.
The leaseholder can talk somebody into it.
They have waivers too.
So on page 9, what I would recommend for your tip height language based on the motion that you passed, I would say 9, where you see paragraph M is, a wind turbine's tip height shall not exceed 650 feet.
Where would that be measured from the ground level or from the level of the concrete base that it's sitting on?
Typically, that'd be close to the same. So I can read the definition of tip height.
Well, what I'm saying is, if I'm, for example, say I'm building it, and I put the concrete, and the concrete is say, I'm just gonna say, throw a number out, say the concrete pad that it's sitting on
Yeah,
is 12 inches above the ground level, then that would put that, and you don't stay from the ground level, that gives that an extra 12 inches.
well, that would
You
be-
understand what I'm trying to
I
say?
understand what you're saying,
But there's nothing that I have seen here that states that the concrete slab has to be ground level. I have not read that in here.
I agree, that's not in there, and so if I have not seen in practice them put a huge, pad like that, where they're raising it, to make a taller turbine. I don't think that's-
You're gonna have a lot of, you have a lot of strength from the.
I understand that.
I'm sure you could.
And
well agree.
my understanding of the concrete that they pour is beveled so that it goes out further the deeper it is. And from what I understand, the bottom of the concrete is 10 foot that they're pouring. So it's beveling. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yes,
That's my understanding of it. But for their structure, but that doesn't mean that. How do I put it in words? I've never seen, I haven't seen in here that states that the top of the concrete has to be ground level.
it does not say that.
And what I'm saying is that they could, if they so desired, and I'm not saying that they're going to.
So what are you saying in the height that you should list from ground level?
From the ground level.
650 tip height from the ground level.
One thing to consider is your zoning, so you can meet all the setback requirements, you could meet the height requirement, but you could still deny a project, because remember, you don't read this proposed amendment in isolation with your zoning ordinance. Your zoning ordinance has a number of discretionary factors for special land use permits. So let's say a developer did mound concrete foundations and then tried to put towers, or proposed to put towers on top of them. That would be, I think, a basis to use a discretionary standard to deny that particular project.
After they put the concrete in?
No, you would do it before the project is even considered.
To answer your question,
It's just, that's an atypical, the what you're suggesting, I think, is an atypical, ordinance provision, and something that I haven't seen.
He's telling you not to do that. Kyle's telling you what to do.
But,
Once again.
you know, I think it's up to you.
It does say from ground level. Does it say from ground level?
It does not say from ground level, because you'll get into a debate of what is ground level. If the term is not defined.
And it won't be, that would be part of the site preparation anyway, what is it?
Site plans.
Yeah, the site plan.
So the issue when you have a term that's not defined in your zoning ordinance is you have to give it its common, plain, ordinary meaning. That's going to mean ground level is likely going to mean different things to many different people. And someone's going to argue, well, it's ground level if the pad is just a little bit high, right? Or ground level is, let's say there's a little ridge and a hill, well, ground level is the level beside it.
So
Let's
from
say
what
it's not
basis are we
totally-
measuring 650 feet tip height?
Generally from the
From the ground level?
bottom
From your
of
house.
the bottom of the pole or the mast to the tip height. That's how the typical.
So the polar mast could be however high they wanna make.
Yeah. Anything
Well,
else?
typically you wouldn't have a turbine that has a, you know, that's not how they're designed to have the tips not be. I have not seen that anywhere in Michigan.
Okay.
That would be also another basis to deny a project if someone was applying something unusual like that. To circumvent, I think that what would be the intent of the ordinance.
Any other discussion?
I have not read in here, and at the PC, they said, look, the DEQ, how do I put it in words, has got the set, but I think it should be in the ordinance of a setback from any stream. Any water that's runs,
Like it's all
Every
state regulations, but I don't think it's done on a township level.
We all have, that have ordinances so far.
Cause there's wetlands in our farming, we have wetland regulations, and if we violate them, you just know, when we got soil maps for our farm, it's got designated wet areas that we have to stay back from for any of our egg processes, or spreading manure, or whatever the activity is, we have to stay away from the wetlands. And I know that's all comes down through the NRCS, through the state.
We just made a survey a couple, about 2 months ago, cause I got a paper on it.
The state gives local discretion on protecting local area resources such as rivers. So what you're saying is correct. You have some local authority discretion. All the other townships have that in their ordinances.
Okay.
Well, I guess we gotta go somewhere with it. I'll make a motion to adopt the wind ordinance
Well, I would say with the
Yeah, go
change-
with the changes that we just addressed.
Okay.
Is there support?
Can I ask you a question real quick before you adopt it? You said that the 300-foot ones don't produce as much as the 650 feet. So we're not getting the power from these anyways, cause it's all going to the Detroit area. Do you guys get more money if it produces more, or what's the reason?
There you go.
Why do we need such high ones?
Motion?
Personally, I'd just soon not have a lot of turbines on my farm.
There's gonna be a lot.
So are they making you have produce so much power in order to put them in, is that the deal? I
The way
mean,
I understand is there is a contract with the electrical grid, or whoever runs the state, they contract so many megawatts to add on to primary lines from a project.
He said he doesn't want more on his farm, but he's not a
There's
leaser,
a
right?
motion that's on the floor.
Pardon me?
I'm asking for support for the motion on the floor.
Motion fails?
Then what is your pleasure?
I make a motion to send it back to the planning commission.
Is there support for that? Yeah. Support, yes.
Have you, it would be good,
I would add in that motion with the changes that have been proposed here tonight.
With the fact that we have made changes.
So when we get a new one, we've got all the changes are there. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried.
Did you vote for us?
Okay, we'll move on to paying the bills.
motion to pay bills 43-41 through 43-75 with IRS of $1,253.02 for a total of $20,388.16.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Steve,
Yes.
Kathy? Yes. Noah? Yes. Ollie, yes. John?
Yes.
Okay, comments from the board.
Well, I wanna thank, Tyler Trout for coming to the, Township Spring Cleanup and helping me out. I majorly appreciated his help. He did a lot of work. Didn't ask him to, he volunteered.
Thank you for dealing with it. Appreciate that. Kathy? John?
I just wanna make a comment that Steve Charlie's did a neat job in Liquid Enterprise the last 5 weeks, talking about the history of Amble and Winfield Township. It's quite enlightening if you are a newer resident to Winfield. talks about Amble back in the 1900 through, and it did talk about train tracks coming through Amble and how controversial that was. And there was a lot of residents on both sides of that. And one thing, I know, I put a lot of thought into this too. When I was a teenager, I remember the township hall was used for oil leasing. And Grace Yankee spearheaded it with Yankee. I just remember being a teenager and how there was no opposition, there was nobody that, everybody was happy about it. And they were leasing, I mean, it was a big deal at the time. It was, I can remember it was like $55 an acre. And just about everybody in the township showed up to sign up for the oil leasing. And then to imagine where we have been the last 2 years in dealing with the wind that blows over the top of our land and how segregated we are. It's amazing to think about it.
Well, there's more people, John, that live among them.
Election's coming up. I have, people going to training in the end of July. From now on, the clerks have to be recertified every year by the state. So the certification, I went through mine a week ago, Thursday. So, there's a lot of new laws coming down on the elections. So it's gonna be a longer process, a more costly process, just to have an election. And we're talking, like, any election is gonna run about pretty close to $8,000 to $10,000 an election. I think that's it.
Okay, I don't have anything, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Was there another section for public comments I thought I saw on the
No.
agenda? Nothing?
I'll entertain,
May I add something to my comment?
yeah.
I wanna add that, we had 2 dumpsters, is all that we had this year for, spring cleanup.
Well, thank you all for doing that.
I think we should thank, the people that helped with Fire Day, Fire Amnesty Day, because that was a big project.
I think we had 2 semis on that one.
And I really appreciate it. I got rid of 20 years of tires.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
And I wanna apologize to the township for not being here to work our township. I got kind of volunteered to work Howard City, so.
Well, it worked out all right. So,
Do we ever have a yard waste disposal day, like leaves and branches? Nowhere in Montgomery County that has one, is there?
Probably not.
All this land and there's no.
Compost it.
I don't have the land to compost it.
I do.
Randy Drod does, he does a big composting pile. I don't know if you're down by Indian Lakes,
I am at Indian Lakes.
he's just to the south of your one road and, to the east a little bit. He composts a big area every year.
And doesn't it sell it? Drop.
Randy Drod, he does the asparagus. They have the asparagus,
And then the something